Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving headfirst into one of the most complex and often controversial topics in international relations. We are going to explore why some countries around the world genuinely accuse the United States of unfair treatment. This isn't about taking sides or pointing fingers. It's about understanding the perspectives and the very real grievances that shape global opinions. So buckle up, because this is going to be a deep dive into history, economics, military power, and even cultural influence. Now I know what you might be thinking. The US is often seen as a champion of democracy and a global leader. But that's precisely why these accusations are so important to unpack. Many nations experience the United States' power in ways that feel anything but fair or equitable. They often see a different side of the coin. A side that involves economic pressure, military interventions, and a perceived disregard for their sovereignty. We are going to break this down into several key areas today. First, we will look at the economic leverage the US wields and how that impacts other nations. Then we will explore the military interventions and the global footprint of American power. We will also touch on the accusations of double standards and hypocrisy in foreign policy. And finally, we will consider the role of cultural influence and even digital surveillance. So let's jump right into our first major point: the immense economic power of the United States and how it can be perceived as unfair. One of the biggest areas where accusations of unfair treatment arise is in the economic sphere. The US dollar reigns supreme as the world's primary reserve currency. This gives the United States an unparalleled advantage in global finance. It means that most international transactions, from oil sales to trade deals, are denominated in dollars. This essentially gives the US enormous financial leverage over other nations. This unique position allows the US to run significant trade deficits without the usual negative consequences that other countries would face. They can print more dollars to finance their spending, knowing that the world will continue to demand and hold their currency. This can be seen as an unfair advantage by countries that struggle with currency stability and balance of payments. They often feel trapped within a system where the US sets the rules. A system that inherently benefits one player more than all the others. Then there are the unilateral sanctions. This is a huge point of contention for many countries. The US frequently imposes sanctions on nations or even individual entities that it deems to be acting against its interests or international norms. While these sanctions are often justified by the US as tools to promote human rights or prevent terrorism, they can have devastating effects on the targeted countries' economies and populations. These sanctions often extend beyond direct trade with the US. They can also penalize third-party countries or companies that do business with the sanctioned nation. This extraterritorial reach is deeply resented by many as an infringement on their sovereignty and economic freedom. It forces other nations to choose between their economic ties with the sanctioned country and their access to the US market and financial system. Think about the impact on ordinary citizens in sanctioned countries. They often bear the brunt of these economic restrictions, facing shortages of essential goods and services. Even humanitarian aid can be complicated by these measures. Many nations view this as a form of collective punishment. They argue that it's a tool of economic warfare. It disproportionately harms innocent people. It's a clear example of how US economic power can be used in ways that feel profoundly unfair to those on the receiving end. Moving on to trade policies, the US has often been accused of protectionism and using its economic might to dictate terms while advocating for free trade. Globally, the US has also implemented tariffs and subsidies that protect its domestic industries. This creates an uneven playing field for developing nations trying to compete in global markets. They often find their agricultural products or manufactured goods facing barriers to entry in the lucrative American market. Meanwhile, they are pressured to open their own markets to US goods and services. This perceived hypocrisy fuels resentment. It makes it seem as though the US preaches one thing, but practices another when it suits its own economic interests. Countries feel that they are not negotiating as equals. They are instead being strong-armed into agreements that benefit the more powerful party. This is a common complaint from nations in various trade blocs. They feel the weight of US economic demands. The influence of the US within international financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank is another area of concern. The US holds significant voting power and influence in these organizations. This allows it to shape policies and lending conditions that can sometimes be seen as serving American interests rather than the equitable development of all nations. Developing countries often feel that these institutions impose structural adjustment programs or austerity measures that benefit global capital markets more than local populations. They argue that these policies are designed to open up their economies to Western investment. They are not genuinely aimed at sustainable local growth. This perceived control over global financial governance makes many nations feel that the system is rigged. It's a system where their voices are often marginalized. Their specific development needs are overlooked in favor of a one-size-fits-all approach. An approach heavily influenced by the most powerful member. This leads to a deep sense of frustration and injustice. It makes them question the fairness of the entire global economic architecture. Now let's shift gears and talk about military interventions and the global footprint of American power. This is perhaps one of the most visible and controversial aspects of US foreign policy. The US has a long history of military interventions in various countries. These actions are often justified by Washington as necessary to promote democracy, protect human rights, or counter terrorism. However, from the perspective of the intervened countries and many others, these actions are often seen as infringements on sovereignty and acts of aggression. They are seen as a powerful nation imposing its will. Think about the interventions in Latin America during the Cold War, or more recently the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. While the stated goals might have been noble, the human cost and the long-term instability created in these regions have been immense. Many nations view these interventions as attempts at regime change or resource control. They see them as a way to install friendly governments or secure strategic interests, not as genuine efforts to help the local population. This perspective is deeply rooted in historical experiences where US involvement often led to prolonged conflict or the installation of authoritarian regimes that served American interests. The sheer number of US military bases around the world is another point of contention. The United States maintains hundreds of military installations in dozens of countries. While these bases are often established through agreements with host nations, many perceive them as a symbol of occupation or a constant reminder of foreign influence. Locals sometimes complain about environmental damage, noise pollution, or cultural clashes associated with these bases. They also raise questions about why a foreign power needs such a massive military presence on their soil. They wonder if it truly serves their national security interests or primarily American ones. These bases are often seen as projecting US power far beyond its borders. They allow the US to quickly deploy forces and intervene in conflicts globally. This capability is viewed by some as a tool for maintaining global hegemony. It's not a tool for collective security. Countries that host these bases often feel a loss of sovereignty. They feel they are drawn into US geopolitical rivalries that may not align with their own national interests. They feel they become targets in conflicts that are not their own. Accusations of supporting certain regimes or opposition groups also fall under this umbrella. The US has a history of backing various factions or governments around the world, sometimes for strategic reasons that contradict its stated values. For example, supporting authoritarian leaders who are deemed allies against a common enemy, or arming rebel groups in a civil conflict. This creates a perception of hypocrisy. It makes other nations question the sincerity of US commitment to democracy and human rights. They see a pattern of selective engagement, a pattern where principles are sacrificed for geopolitical advantage. This selective support can destabilize regions and prolong conflicts. It can also lead to deep mistrust among local populations. They often feel that the US is playing both sides or manipulating internal affairs for its own benefit. This leaves a lasting legacy of resentment and suspicion. It makes future cooperation incredibly difficult. It makes them question the true intentions behind any US foreign policy initiative. Drone strikes and extraterritorial operations are a more modern aspect of this military power. The use of drones for targeted killings in countries with which the US is not officially at war raises serious questions about international law and sovereignty. While the US argues these strikes are necessary for national security and counterterrorism, many nations view them as acts of war. They see them as a blatant disregard for their territorial integrity. The civilian casualties that sometimes result from these strikes further fuel this outrage. It makes them question the morality and legality of such operations. These actions create a sense of vulnerability and powerlessness among affected nations. They feel that their airspace and their citizens are not safe from foreign military action that is conducted without their consent or even knowledge. This erodes trust and reinforces the idea that the US operates above international law. It operates with impunity. It truly makes them feel like second-class citizens on the global stage. Next up, let's tackle the perceived double standards and hypocrisy in US foreign policy. This is a recurring theme in criticisms of the United States. Many countries accuse the US of applying one set of rules to itself and its allies and another stricter set of rules to its adversaries or less powerful nations. This creates a deep sense of unfairness and undermines the credibility of US foreign policy. It makes it seem like the US is not genuinely committed to universal principles. A prime example is the promotion of democracy and human rights. The US often champions these values globally and criticizes countries that violate them. However, critics point to instances where the US has supported authoritarian regimes or overlooked human rights abuses by strategic allies. This selective application of principles is seen as hypocritical. It suggests that the US prioritizes its own geopolitical interests over its stated values. It makes its calls for democracy ring hollow. Think about US relations with certain oil-rich nations or countries that are crucial in counter-terrorism efforts. While these nations might have questionable human rights records, they often receive less criticism or even direct support from the US. Meanwhile, countries that challenge US hegemony or pursue independent foreign policies are often subjected to intense scrutiny and condemnation for similar or even lesser infractions. This double standard is glaring to many observers. It makes them question the sincerity of US human rights advocacy. It makes them wonder if it's just a tool for political leverage. Another area is nuclear non-proliferation. The US strongly advocates for other countries to limit their nuclear programs and adhere to international treaties. Yet it maintains a vast nuclear arsenal of its own and has historically been the only country to use nuclear weapons in conflict. While the US justifies its arsenal as a deterrent and a necessity for global stability, many nations see this as an unfair expectation. They see it as a powerful nation telling others not to develop weapons that it itself possesses in abundance. This creates a sense of imbalance. It makes them feel that the US is trying to maintain a monopoly on power. This perception is particularly strong in countries that feel threatened by regional adversaries or other nuclear powers. They argue that if nuclear weapons are truly a deterrent, then they too should have the right to develop them for their own security. The US position is seen as an attempt to deny them a level playing field. It's an attempt to preserve its own strategic advantage. This fuels a sense of injustice and defiance. It makes them question the fairness of the entire non-proliferation regime. Climate change commitments also highlight perceived double standards. The US has historically been one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases. While it has made commitments to address climate change, it has also withdrawn from international agreements like the Paris Agreement at various times. Many developing nations who are disproportionately affected by climate change argue that the US and other developed nations have a greater historical responsibility to act. They feel that the burden of climate action is unfairly placed on them. They point out that their economic development was hindered while developed nations industrialized without environmental regulations. Now they are being asked to sacrifice their own development for a problem largely created by others. This creates a strong sense of historical injustice. It makes them feel that they are being asked to pay for the sins of others. It makes them question the fairness of global environmental governance. Then there's the issue of international law and institutions. The US has often been accused of selectively adhering to international law. It sometimes bypasses multilateral institutions when it deems them inconvenient or not aligned with its immediate interests. For example, the US has not ratified several key international treaties like the International Criminal Court or the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. This sends a message that the US believes it is above certain international legal frameworks. It believes it can pick and choose which rules apply to it. This stance undermines the very fabric of international law and order. It makes other nations question the US commitment to a rules-based global system. They feel that if the most powerful nation doesn't adhere to the rules, then why should anyone else? This perception of exceptionalism creates deep resentment. It makes them feel that the US operates in a moral and legal vacuum. It truly makes them question the integrity of the entire global system. The US veto power in the UN Security Council is another major point of contention. As one of the 5 permanent members, the US can unilaterally block any resolution. This power is often used to protect its allies or its own interests, even when the vast majority of other nations support a particular action. This is seen by many as an undemocratic exercise of power. It allows one nation to override the collective will of the international community. Countries often feel frustrated and powerless when their efforts to address global issues are blocked by a single veto. They argue that the Security Council's structure is outdated and unfairly grants disproportionate power to a few nations. This makes them question the legitimacy and effectiveness of the UN itself. It makes them feel that the global governance system is inherently biased. It's biased towards the interests of the powerful few. Let's move on to soft power and cultural dominance. This is a more subtle but equally powerful aspect of US influence that can lead to accusations of unfairness. American culture, through its movies, music, fashion, and consumer brands, has a pervasive global reach. While many embrace this cultural exchange, others view it as a form of cultural imperialism. They see it as an erosion of their own indigenous cultures and values. It feels like an unfair imposition. This isn't necessarily a deliberate policy of the US government, but rather a consequence of its economic and media dominance. Hollywood films, for example, dominate global box offices. American pop music is played everywhere. Fast food chains are ubiquitous. While many enjoy these cultural exports, others worry about the homogenization of global culture. They worry about the loss of local traditions and artistic expressions. They feel their unique identities are being diluted. This cultural saturation can lead to a feeling that local voices and narratives are being overshadowed. It makes it harder for local artists, filmmakers, and musicians to compete. They feel that their own cultural products are not given the same platform or resources. This creates a sense of cultural inferiority or marginalization. It makes them feel like their culture is less valuable or less appealing. It truly makes them feel like they are losing their distinct identity. The promotion of specific political ideologies like liberal democracy and capitalism is also seen by some as an imposition. While these ideologies are foundational to the US, they are not universally accepted or desired. Many countries have different political and economic systems that they believe are better suited to their unique circumstances. Yet they often face pressure from the US to adopt Western-style democracy and free market capitalism. This pressure can come in the form of aid conditions.